Hi class, it's Mrs. Urban. Welcome to your lecture on bacteria. So bacteria are all prokaryotic cells. Traditionally they were classified as Monera or Monerians, and they were also known as bacteria, and that's plural, or a bacterium is a single bacteria cell. Presently, the prokaryotes are divided into two kingdoms. You should know what the kingdoms are, so stop now, try to guess. What are the two names of the prokaryotic kingdoms? If you said Archaebacteria, which is the first one, and Eubacteria, then you're correct. So Archaebacteria comes from the Greek word archeo, which means ancient. I think of the word archaic. And they all live in very, very harsh environments, which we've already discussed. Eubacteria is the second. It is the larger of the two kingdoms, and they live everywhere, or almost everywhere. They're vital for life functions. They're vital for us to survive, for us to digest our food and all sorts of things. And we use them in industry. We use them in the food industry and all different kinds of the medical industry. And both are very helpful, and some can be harmful. So facts about bacteria: they're found everywhere. They are very small. This is a picture of them down there. We're going to see it a little bit larger. They're much smaller than any of the cells in our body. The yeast that we looked at on a cell, they are even much, much, much smaller than the yeast. So they have no membrane-bound structures or a nucleus. So they are lacking nucleus or any large organelles. And they are usually surrounded by a cell wall and a capsule for extra protection. So the general structure right here, you have in red is the capsule. The capsule is around the outside for protection. Then in yellow you have your cell wall, and in green around it is the cell membrane. The tail at the end is called a flagellum. That helps with locomotion, and the little hairs coming off it are called villi. The liquid inside is the cytoplasm, and that big red mass in the middle is the DNA. The DNA in bacteria is not inside a nucleus, so it's called circular DNA, and it's just floating inside the cytoplasm. The little round balls are ribosomes. Ribosomes are organelles that are in our cells as well. However, they are not membrane-bound organelles, so they have them in there. And we also have some plasmids in our bacteria. So this next page is a blank cell structure with letters. You should take some time to try to label all of the parts of the cell structure. Try to do it without looking at the other slide, or look at the other slide first and figure out what you have, and then try to label this or draw it yourself. You can print out the slideshow and label it, or draw it. But make sure you know the pieces and parts. So if on a test I have a bacterial cell and I point to a part, you know what it is. So classification for bacteria, we do it according to shape. One shape of a bacteria is called coccus or cocci, and it is spherical. It's round like a ball. So they can be single cells, they can be in pairs, they can be in chains, they can be in clusters. An example of the coccus bacteria is Streptococcus or Staphylococcus, which will cause like the strep infection or a staph infection, if you've heard of any of those. So they are just these little round balls. Another shape is called bacillus or bacilli. So bacillus is singular, bacilli is plural, and it is a rod shape. Again, they can be by themselves, or they can be in pairs, or they can be in chains of these rods. Anthrax is a bacillus bacteria, and E. coli is also a bacillus bacteria, and those can make you very sick. One more shape is called a spirochete. A spirochete is a spiral, and it only exists by itself. Examples of spirochete bacteria are syphilis, which is a sexually transmitted disease, or Lyme disease, which is a vector-borne disease. You get that from a tick bite. So Lyme disease is a little spiral spirochete, and so is syphilis. Bacteria reproduce asexually, meaning they reproduce on their own without sex, usually through a process called binary fission. And on the next slide, we're going to see that. So under certain conditions, bacteria can reproduce very, very quickly. A small colony of bacteria can double in under 20 minutes. Then that whole doubled colony doubles, and that one doubles. I mean, they reproduce very, very fast. So if you get a little bit of exposure, you can all of a sudden become very sick and have a lot of bacteria quickly. Binary fission is pictured right here. So it is the most common type of asexual reproduction because that's how bacteria reproduce, and they're very common organisms. And it's when a single cell, that little round cell right there, splits to form two daughter cells. So it is pulling and splitting apart, forming two identical cells. But not all bacteria are identical, and they actually have a really cool ability to hook together, it's called conjugation, and give each other a piece of their DNA. So these two will transfer DNA. They're going to be temporarily joined. So if you look at these two red bacterial cells and the little red line that's in between them, they are hooked together temporarily, and they can just give a piece of the DNA to the other cell. There are also things called endospores. Some bacteria have them, not all do, or they can develop them. It is a thick covering around the DNA that allows the bacterium to remain dormant for a really long period of time, even many years if it's necessary. An example of organisms that have endospores and can survive a lot of things and be around for a long time, anthrax and tetanus can develop them. So these endospores will protect them from really harsh environments, and they can just lie dormant and wait for the environment to change to become reactive. So bacteria are very helpful. Some of the things they do that help us are to decompose food waste. So they help to break down our food. Then they also produce vitamins. They produce antibodies. We use them in genetic engineering. Okay, so we will use the bacteria to be able to insert cells, and we'll go over this process in a little bit more detail in class. They also decompose dead plants and animals, and we use them in industry and agriculture. So right here you have a dairy cow. They use a lot of it in the dairy industry, and nitrogen fixing bacteria, which we will show a picture of. So here is nitrogen fixing bacteria, and it is found on the roots of plants. So those little nodules on the roots are the nitrogen fixing bacteria. And they can be helpful in fixing nitrogen for plant use. So it means they take the nitrogen from the atmosphere that plants can't use and change it into a form that they can use. These little nodules are on the roots of a soybean, and they're called rhizobium. Common bacterial diseases include Lyme disease, which is a spirochete again, tetanus, strep throat, tuberculosis, also known as TB, E. coli, and many, many others. Most bacteria, though, do not make us sick. Some of them that do make us sick can make us very sick. Thank you very much.